Hey KK, are you a fan of cultural appropriation?
Of course, I can't go down to the local supermarket unless I'm dressed like a Mexican bandit, or as I like to think about it, your cousin.
In that case, you're going to love Be a Rebel noodles. They make award-winning delicious ramen noodles with an Irish twist.
What, bankruptcy and alcoholism?
No, all their noodles are homemade using high-quality ingredients. In fact, respected food critic Jay Rayner called them deserving of poetry.
What a cuck, man up, Jay.
Their sauces, noodles and broths are created using skills that were developed over years of working in Michelin-starred kitchens. They're dead easy to make, the noodles take 1 minute to cook, and the whole dish takes only 10 minutes to put together in the comfort of your own home. I'm hungry just explaining this to you.
You're always hungry, mate.
I mean, that's a fair point. Go to bearebel.com. That's BIAREBEL.com and get a tasty flavour of the East in your dinner time.
Yet again, yet another election where in some quarters, and I'm not saying this is true, it's definitely not many people in the Labour Party and generally on the left are saying this, but there's certainly people on the centre left that their standard reaction to losing yet another election is, why won't these gullible fuckwits vote for us?
Hello and welcome to TRIGGERnometry. I'm Francis Foster.
I'm Konstantin Kitten.
And this is a show for you if you want honest conversations with fascinating people.
We do have a fascinating guest for you today, but just to set the context, we're recording this the day after the local elections in the UK, where the Conservative Party, which has been in power for 11 years, has actually advanced and made more progress, particularly by capturing the working class vote. So we thought, who better to get back on the show than our regular, one of our favourite guests. He's the comedian Geoff Norcott.
Hello.
Welcome back, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking when I was on this before, it feels like I've been saying the same thing about what's likely to happen for quite a while. I think there's a few people that have been saying this about the working class vote. It's not an unfamiliar narrative. And then here we are. There was this iceberg that the Labour Party were warned about. And they just went, no, we just keep fucking sailing towards that iceberg. I think we could sort of chicane around that iceberg. I think the iceberg would be okay. And it's interesting, you know, like in terms of normally, I like good politics, right? You know, the idea of an opposition it's always sort of funny when Labour do badly. I can't explain exactly why that is.
I think we know.
It's sort of funny. And yeah, I don't know, man. As this is happening, I find myself slightly melancholic for the state of the opposition, you know, because it's quite sad in a way. You know, I think I love cricket, and when England play Australia, you want to beat Australia. But I mean, there was a period when we were battering them at home. That's not as much fun. And it's also not good for cricket. And I think there's probably something true about that in politics as well.
Well, the thing with you is you didn't always vote Tory, right? You only started voting Tory about 2010.
Yeah.
And you've written a book, which is called Where I Went Right, which is about your journey.
How the left lost me.
Yeah, yeah.
Which they would call victim blaming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the timing, this kind of comes out on Thursday, the 13th of May. I mean, and all anybody's talking about at the moment is about the migration of working class voters away from the Labour Party. Interestingly, you know, with the way that the pandemic's gone, there were times last year, because we finished the manuscript, you know, I filed it in November, and I was like, Jesus, like, this is going to look ridiculous. Everyone's going to have deserted the Tories if the management of the pandemic is as shambolic as it's been so far. And then now, it probably goes the other way, you know, where if anything, I might have slightly underestimated things.
And I mean, we are where we are. Why do you think it is that the working classes, particularly up north, have turned their back on Labour?
Well, I suppose, you know, there's so many reasons, aren't there? There's so many. Just pick a hot take,
Geoff's
man.
not excited about this at all. This is very sad.
No, I am like a kid in a candy store. Well, what I thought was about my own process of voting on this occasion. Let's bring it right down to the ballot box. What happens when you go there? And people might not think that I do this, but I always ask myself last-minute questions about, okay, could I vote for the other lot? You know, even when it was Leave, when it was the Brexit referendum, my choice was between Leave and abstain, right? And I always ask myself that question. You know, even in the 2019 general election, there was aspects of the Tory campaign which I wasn't fond of, and again, I asked myself that question on this occasion. I thought, okay, there've been things I haven't liked about the Tories over the last year, so let's just go through the other options. I went, could I vote Labour? No, I can't vote Labour. It's just a million reasons.
Why not, Geoff? Why can't you vote Labour?
The offer. I think it's the overall offer, isn't it, of the left is not a good offer. And
What do you mean by the offer? Like, give us some concrete.
It's not just the Labour Party as well. The image, the perception of the left. That's often what people are partially voting for in their mind. I put an X here. What do I get? It's not just about the Labour Party. You know, it's something beyond that. What am I endorsing? And there's a culture within and without the Labour Party that is way left of the country. You know, in terms of, if you look at their activists and their membership base and where the country's at and what the country thinks are priorities, who wants to tear down statues, who wants to get on with things right now. You look at even corporate culture. You know, a lot of these companies are trying to send out appealing messages. You know, I don't know who they always think that they're appealing to, but they seem to think that young people are the only people that buy stuff, and that young people won't get more right-wing as they get older. That's always quite an interesting, misguided supposition. There's so much. There's so much. There's the current leader, Keir Starmer. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad politician, but he doesn't summon anything in me, you know. Like, and people want to feel something from a leader. People want to feel sort of not inspired, but they want to feel moved. And when he came into power, when he became leader, there was a lot of talk about forensic Keir, and that was touted in social media to be a good thing. And, you know, it's a good thing when you're a QC to be forensic. But if you're, look, this is a very base analogy, but if you're on a stag do and you've got forensic Keir and rugby tackle Boris, and the night splits up a bit, or we'll go in different places. Yeah. Where are you going? You know? And I think that people like Boris. I'd say this, the country like Boris a lot more than I do. Wouldn't class.
Well, I was going to say, like, you talk about a leader making you feel something. Boris Johnson.
I mean, look, I'm going on the stag do. I'm going out with Boris.
Yeah.
The following day, I'm like, oh mate, I've got to get an earlier train. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily wanting to hang out with a bloke, but he makes people feel something. And then you've got what have the Labour Party done? We've had these existential crises in terms of Brexit and COVID. And it does seem that in both instances, their strategy was, well, this is a tricky one for the Tories. They're in a bit of a mess. Let's just see how this plays out. They've done that for both things, and this is within, you know, within the space of 2.5 years. We've seen them do this. They've prevaricated, and they've essentially sort of hoped that there was a coach crash, right? They've seen the coach veering off the motorway, and they've gone, the most important thing for us to do is that there's no footage of us with our hand on the wheel. That is cowardly in a way. And yeah, the MPs, the Parliamentary Labour Party to an extent, they just don't feel connected. They don't seem to see the world the same way that I do. And another thing to just remember is that, you know, in the very recent past, the Tories have grappled with difficult things and got results, right? So whether Brexit completely unfurls and this deal was proved to have been shoddy, at this point, they did it. You know, they actually did deliver something. And in Western democracies, for a long time, no one's done anything radical, right? He actually, you know, and the left are probably their own worst enemies in that they've made it possible for Boris Johnson to look like fucking He-Man for doing things that weren't that impossible. You know, so he'll never get the withdrawal agreement open. He did that, right? Never get a trade deal within a year. He got that, right? Never be Prime Minister. Never win an election. He'll never turn COVID round. And he's done all these things, and he ends up sort of by didn't get more credit, perhaps, than he deserves for these things. I mean, even as I'm talking now, I'm bouncing around things because there are so many different reasons. I mean, the economic news that's come out in the last few days, that once again, the most dystopian prophecies of parts of the left about what's going to happen to this country have underestimated how dynamic and vibrant the economy is.
Do you think that's it, Geoff? Like everything now, and it's not just the left, it's also people on the right. Like we catastrophize everything so much, and maybe it's just so common now to be like, well, you know, Brexit will never happen, or if it does, it will be the end of the... And that's because they're trying to stop it happening. And
they go over the top.
But that's my point, right? It's like they go so far because they think that if they say you're going to get super gonorrhea and there'll be no sandwiches left, like that will stop Brexit.
That was the most powerful arguments for me. That was the only time. Oh wait, but hang on, no sandwiches.
Yeah,
and I got a flaky dick. They slightly over-egg it.
Well, a lot, right? And we're all kind of in that loop of like the media exaggeration, the Twitter hyperbole.
Yeah.
But then there's a price to pay for that down the line when the public go, actually, none of that has happened. So you've been bullshitting the whole time. Why would we take you seriously now?
No, absolutely. And large swathes of the sort of centre-left media commentariat have sort of fired all their bullets. They've spurned their credibility, one, in respect of how dystopian their predictions about Brexit were, and two, you know, some of the attacks on Boris, there are certain things that were absolutely legitimate, but there have been times within the last year where he does something odd to intelligent people. He makes them a bit deranged. Like, they hate him. They hate him so much. Like, we've just got to, if I could just get Boris out of power, something would be cleansed, something would be okay with the world again. And I think the public see that sometimes, you know, whether it's an opening homily or a monologue on Newsnight, or it's certain stories being fanned slightly beyond their actual relevance to a lot of people. I mean, the most recent one is Curtain Gate, you know. I think it was fair for Keir Starmer to ask those questions at PMQs, maybe not as many as he did, but I think it was, you know, he has to bring stuff like that up. And then, like, the following day, he's in John Lewis and he's looking at wallpaper. And, like, and on social media, that gets a lot of credit. They're like, oh, sick burn, Keir. You think, it just made him look fixated. It made him look fixated on a triviality. And at a time where there's a pandemic, you know, we need to rebuild the economy. You've got what's happening in India. You get 6 questions at PMQs, and he did 3 on curtains.
But don't you think a large part of the problem is that people in London who are very middle class don't understand working class people?
Yeah.
They don't really talk to them. They don't really encounter them. They don't know what it's like to live in a town like Rotherham or all the rest of it. So how can they represent them?
Well, I mean, we've seen yet another election where, in some quarters, and I'm not saying this is true, it's definitely not many people in the Labour Party and generally on the left are saying this, but there's certainly people on the centre left that their standard reaction to losing yet another election is, why won't these gullible fuckwits vote for us? I mean, these stupid people, once again, self-harm, they've been duped. I say, you know what? If they're that easily duped, why can't you dupe them? Right? A lot of politics is about propaganda. It's about fluffing an idea. Every party, to varying degrees, is selling something beyond which something way beyond. I mean, this levelling up thing, right? It's fantastic. It makes me feel good. I'm not sure how much of it they'll be able to do, but that's the job of politics, to sell something hopeful and something positive. And so that's the Labour Party's job, is to do the same thing, but they can't dupe anybody at the moment. And also, I mean, the NHS is a good point in a way. Some of the old certainties about politics have been shattered. But, you know, I know a lot of left-wing friends that have said to me, and this is a classic anecdote, isn't it? When I've got a point I want to make, it's like, actually, I was speaking on the doorstep to someone convenient who I made up. But genuinely, a lot of left-wing friends have said to me that the furlough scheme really surprised them. You know, the way they'd been conditioned their whole lives, it certainly wasn't that the Tories would swoop in and pay people's wages. And the original furlough was probably more generous than it needed to be. And I think the fact that the country have accrued 150 billion quid's worth of savings suggests that they might have not got the balance quite right there. And then the NHS as well. You know, you can make a really legitimate argument about whether or not the NHS was funded enough going into this pandemic. But the truth is, it's been prioritised within the context of it. And a lot of right-wing people would say that it's been too prioritised. It's been too protected. So these are the two old certainties, right, of British politics. The Tory party, they don't care about you. They won't spend money. They spent money, right? Well, the NHS, they want to destroy it. And for the last 15 years, every single election, it's the most obvious one in the playbook, is the NHS. It's minutes from death. Is this the end for the Caped Crusader? It's almost like those old Batman, Adam West. Is it the end? Of course it's fucking not. It's got another episode next week. And the NHS, I mean, the NHS, it would be the quickest suicide note in political history would be to end the principle of healthcare that's free at the point of service. The Conservative Party will never do that, okay? What they will have now is this, I think, amusing challenge in a way, is they've got this new broad coalition of voters, and I fully expect them to become a lot more northern. They've done a bit of it, haven't they, with the old Rishi with the Yorkshire tea, but they are going to lean into this, you know? They're going to lean into this hard. And some of the things that they've done are just... People sold their performative gestures, right? Like moving Treasury offices to York. OK, it is a symbolic gesture. But Labour could have done that symbolic gesture. You know, the long time in power where they could have done it. It's just good politics, right? So
And also York is posh.
York is the one place they go to, isn't it? They get a nice train journey up there on the East Coast Main Line, have a little bit of lunch up there, arrive half cut. Yeah, I mean, they're not doing it in Wakefield. Let's put it that way. But like this is common sense to spread the power base around the country. And I'm not saying it. This is weird because I probably was as uncertain about voting Conservative in this last election as I have been for a while, and yet it's really not hard to work out why they've done well.
Let's talk about your journey, actually.
I just wanted to make this one question. All right, so they're in the ship, right? Labour. We all know that. Okay, please don't show this Diet Coke. We've got sponsors, Geoff. Come on.
It's okay. I made it at home. It's mine.
It's your home brew.
My own recipe.
Yeah. Right.
Why do you think you're so happy?
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's fueled with something. Right. But so we've got the Labour Party. How do they turn it around then? How do they capture the ordinary bloke on the street?
Look at his face.
They can't. I don't think that they can, and I know.
Look at his face.
I don't. I feel a bit bad for them in a way because this isn't just about things that the Labour Party have done, by the way.
Yeah.
This has been other factors that are partially beyond their control. I mean, they were egged on to a position of second referendum by a London-centric media. No, this is how everyone feels. You know, Lynn at Hot Yoga, we all think that there should be a second referendum. They were egged on, weren't they, by Keir Starmer? No. We've got an e-petition. Well, you know, a lot of the Gmail addresses sound fucking similar, but we've got this 6 million person petition to revoke the referendum. So they were egged on in that. And let's just quickly, briefly stop on that before I go back to your question. Within the last year and a half, the Labour Party, right, the party of the working classes, voted or moved to a position, a farcical position, whereby they did not respect the democratic outcome. Now, I know at that point there were a lot of issues with getting Brexit delivered, but their job, like when you vote, that is the only time we have true equality in this country, right? Whether you're Jacob Rees-Mogg or whether you're fucking Brian Cox, weird reference point, but you know what I mean? Like they probably are at the other ends of the culture war. They're supposed to protect that, and they didn't protect that. And that, if you think about how long it took the Lib Dems to get past tuition fees, this is way fucking beyond that. And then another factor, Francis, is you've got like this migration of people out of those towns. Like a lot of people, youngsters are going to metropolitan centres like Newcastle or Manchester or London or Bristol, but it kind of leaves these towns vacant of people that might vote Labour. And I said on my podcast at the beginning of this year, I said one of my boldest predictions was that the Labour Party might formally split. And you always think, well, they look into the abyss and then they reunite. But it feels more fundamental this time, and I don't honestly know how the two wings of the Labour Party can reconcile.
It's something we've been talking about on this show quite a lot. And I just want to, for people maybe watching for the first time or not familiar with our views, like Francis and I are not happy about what's happening. We, you know, him and I both used to vote Labour frequently, Lib Dem as well in my case. Sorry, I apologise. But like...
I've been there, look, we all have, you know.
Right.
We all did crazy stuff at university.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's a healthy position at all where you've got a party that's in power for 11 years and it's doing better and better, and the opposition is worse and worse. And I think your point about the media in particular is very true, where, and doing the show has actually shown me that to a large extent, there's a whole body of people, particularly outside the big cities and particularly outside of London, who just don't feel represented by anything they see on their screens. No. That's mainstream. And the Labour Party is pandering to that as opposed to actually trying to connect with people. But for anyone who's not familiar with you, I want to talk a little bit about your background because you talk about it in the book. Where when you talk about growing up, tell everybody a little bit about your backstory, your background, like what was your childhood like, and because that informs a lot of your views, I think, and that's what I always found interesting about you.
Well, I mean, like inherently, I should be Labour. You know, a lot of people think the South East, but as you all know, there's a strong working class tradition and Labour trade union movement in the South East as well. Despite perceptions, my dad was a trade union man. You know, my mum, both my parents were disabled, lived on council estates and council properties. So I was kind of had a lot of the sort of tick list. Eventually, you know, went into comedy. But, you know, that in a way is the point of the book. Where did I go right? Like everyone always says, well, how does someone like you end up voting for the so-called baddies? But then it goes, you know, it turns out now, you ask that question of a lot of people, right? That is now no longer an uncommon thing. And I think the truth is that I voted Labour in 97, 2001 and stuff. Initially, it was just a ubiquitous, yeah, you know, we all did there in Britpop. I was in London. I thought everybody voted Labour. I just thought this is what you do, right? But if I look deeper into my childhood, I can actually see that there were at least small c conservative things. You know, I got a bit of stick for this because of an article in the Mail on Sunday, but I can remember one of my first memories, not one of my first memories, but an early memory of just people wearing dressing gowns like all day long. You know, on this state, I fucking can't handle. I'm like, get dressed. You know, that's quite a judgy little conservative reaction, isn't it? Like, for God's sake, get dressed. What are you doing? I've just got this theory that, you know, you shouldn't wear a dressing gown after 9 a.m. unless you're ill or Hugh Hefner. Those are the only two contexts, right? Yeah. And I remember getting free school meals and not liking that and hating that and just wondering, you know, I was told that, well, the state pay for it. And I was like, who the state? What if they decide they don't want to pay for it? I can remember like the anxiety of being not poor. This gets overstated. You know, people want me to sort of hype this up. We weren't, but we had periods where it was really close to the breadline. But overall, in the context of where we lived, we did okay. But I remember those moments because we'd started off doing all right, my family. We were, you know, we had a private property in a decent street in Wimbledon, but then the family my mum and dad got divorced and then we moved to a council estate. So that's quite an interesting status drop at the age of 9, so it might have heightened my sensitivity to it. And we used to get like clothing grants and stuff like that. And I was always dressed like a fucking tramp. And I remember once I had these trousers that were so tight. I went to school in Wandsworth, and as you'll remember, Francis, cussing people, just like an Olympic sport. You know, best mates being as mean to you as possible. And I had these skin-tight trousers before they were fashionable. And one of the lads said to me, he went, "My God, Jeffrey," he goes, "I can see your pulse." Which is a put-down I still use to this day.
Yeah.
So I guess there was a material thing in me quite early, was I just wanted more. And a lot of people in this country just want that, right?
Yeah.
Just, I want to do all right. I want to do all right for myself. This is the most human thing imaginable, right? Is to want to do okay for yourself and improve the situation in your family, and beyond that, improve society as a whole. For a lot of people, those are the sort of stages of priority that you go through. And yet there have been times, and this is not just from the Labour Party, but the left, that kind of aspiration has seemed like, in some ways, a dirty thing. And I read an article in the Times this morning by Janice Turner, I think, was saying that just a lot of people don't have the same sad, drab lives that the Labour Party think they have. You know, in Hartlepool, yes, salaries are a lot lower, but so are houses. So it's a lot of things. A lot of people in Hartlepool are having the things materially in life that a lot of us are looking for. And this period, particularly under Corbyn, whereby everyone was painted to be a victim. There's a lot of working class people don't want to be thought of as having shit lives, right? There's people in society that are really struggling. And I think that, you know, you should definitely focus more resources on those people. Outside of that, if you've got a gaff, car, a couple of holidays a year, a couple of nights out a month, it's a good life.
But it's the thing as well, it's like, I think people massively misunderstand, just from my experience, and I talking in Russia, there's working class people in Russia as well, like in many different places. People don't want free stuff, really.
Most people don't.
Most people don't want free stuff. They don't want free internet access. They want a job and they want to work and they want to do well. You know, they're not looking to get loads of handouts. Now, if you say to them...
That's where they went wrong in Russia in the end. I would say that would definitely be the worst country to have communism then.
Yeah.
We don't actually want free stuff.
Terrible accent.
Well, where was that? Was I anywhere in Eastern Europe?
Serbia.
There?
Yeah, I think you were in Serbia, mate.
Probably the most racist country in Europe, Geoff.
Come on. It was the really liberal bit of Serbia.
You know what pisses me off?
The bohemian bit of Belgrade.
People say that my Russian accent is worse than many other comedians, even though I'm actually Russian.
Yeah, we all try it, and then we all also say, well, where was I? Croatia.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, I think, if you ask people, are you in favour of free internet? A lot of people will say, yeah, but in general, they're not in favour of the state providing a ton of free stuff for people, because they have to work for a living, and it's kind of like ingrained in people.
Well, that loss of responsibility for your own stuff, right? You might get a free ticket to go and see a great band at the O2 or whatever, and you will enjoy that night. But I'll tell you something, the ticket that you paid for, that you sat, and the day it was coming out, 9 a.m, they go on sale, and you sat, I was going to say on the phone, making myself, they go, oh, okay, boomer, right? Yeah. I was sat there, I was looking on CFAX until the U2 tickets come up. But you did yourself, you're going to enjoy more. It's got a sweeter feeling to it. And I do worry that over the years, and this is under successive governments, and also a lot under the Conservatives, who've got a lot of these patrician elements themselves, it's just bit by bit taking stuff out of people's control. And I just worry that if you remove those things from the human character, you stop evolving in a way. It's a really important thing, taking responsibility for your own shit. It's an empowering narrative, because the good thing about it is that you have a capacity to change it yourself. If you sort of abdicate responsibility, you're powerless. I have to believe that I can make stuff better for myself, sometimes to a deluded fault, you know. But all the time you spend thinking other people have kind of taken away opportunities from you is time that you could be spent pursuing them yourself. Obviously, there's certain elements of social justice that need to be pursued, but in terms of getting shit done in your own life, that's mainly what you'd have to focus on.
And the thing that I was very, very surprised by, and I didn't predict in the slightest, was this new authoritarianism creeping into the left, particularly when it comes to COVID. Oh, we've got to lock, I think it was Zara Sultana, so we've got to lock down everything until, you know, there's not one COVID case left. Are you nuts?
I mean, there are certain incantations on the left that really worried me, and I think that no one's safe till everyone's safe. First up, no. If you can imagine someone doing that as they say it, it's probably bollocks.
Yeah.
No one's safe till everyone. That's fucking not true. It's not true of anything. No one's drunk till everyone's drunk. That's not true.
Yeah.
Okay. No one's safe till everyone's safe sounds like the kind of thing that Jason Statham would say just before he hops out of a fucking Chinook. Okay. No one's safe till everyone's safe. What's that, Jason? That's not even logically possible. Right?
Yeah.
And I think the problem with those kind of incantations is the purpose of them is not for other people. It's because it makes you feel good as you say it. And if you're saying or doing something because it makes you feel good rather than because it makes a change for the people that need it, that's selfishness. That's the opposite of what the left purport to be. And, you know, the Blair Project and New Labour was about the left kind of reining in certain instincts, because they knew that the only way that you could really make a change for people was to have the levers of power, whereby there are some elements of the modern left, for them, principled opposition seems to be a more important thing than actually being in power, which I'd argue, weirdly, is narcissistic.
Francis, do you like biscuits? Stupid question. If you like biscuits as much as him, you have to try Zingy Berry Bakery. They're a small family-run bakery that make award-winning sweet cookies and savory crackers. Francis will explain how many awards they've won, won't you, Francis? Their sumptuous cookies are made with whole grain oats and real butter, while their savory crackers are made with whole grain oats and are both wheat and dairy free. And they've got a brilliant offer. All you have to do is enter our code, which is of course triggered, on your first order, and you'll not only get 10% off, they'll give you free delivery as well. That's 10% off and free delivery on your first order with our code, which is triggered. Go to zingaberrybakery.co.uk. The link is in the description. It's zingaberrybakery.co.uk, and get your biscuits today.
I think I've eaten too many biscuits.
Never heard him say that before.
Wow. But I mean, again, like the point that we always have to ask ourselves is, where do we go from here? Because the reality is, things are. It seems desperate. Don't
Are you all right, mate?
Yeah. I'm gonna
look. The thing is,
He's sad for democracy.
Yeah, I'm genuinely sad.
Well, I mean, we've got one-party states in 3 different parts of Britain.
Yeah, right.
It's not great.
No, it's not.
It's not great. SME, Labour got
Wales. Yeah, great.
the big one.
Yep.
And you know, the one place that can actually win you a majority in Parliament, which is England, is run by the Tories. It isn't fantastic, but is it maybe a degree to which we've all retreated into identities?
Yeah.
People who are Tory are now more Tory, aren't they? You know, I do worry about this as well. So something that the left, certain people on the left, on the online hard left, have done is every time there's a vote and every time you get called selfish or stupid, they sort of radicalise Tories. People that voted Tory for the first time, I think, oh yeah, just on this occasion, I'll lend Boris my vote. Or maybe I'll vote Cameron this time because I think that, you know, after the credit crunch, Labour had spent a lot. Maybe, oh, I'm a fucking ignorant, selfish twat, am I? It's like, you know, like certain things the US did in the Middle East, radicalised radical Islamists. I think you've got people that are way more Tory now than they would have otherwise been. And of course it goes the other ways. And, you know, I have noticed on the online right, there's an element of kind of intellectual certainty that's creeping in. And those people on the left are never going to come over if they've been called certain names as well. But I just think that if you look across a 10-year period, that was a phenomenon that certainly seemed to start on the left. And you go, great, that person is probably going to vote Tory for the next 3 elections. It is weird. Do you know, like my old man, he was in the Labour Party. I am sort of sad about what's happening, and that might sound mealy-mouthed, but I wanted to be like, yeah, you know, the old thing. But I don't know, something happened for me after that 2019 general election. I'm not as tribal as I was. I start, you know, this culture war thing. It's a bit ridiculous sometimes, and it pulls you into points of view that you wouldn't have otherwise had. You go, I don't know why I'm this angry about Meghan Markle. I actually don't care that much, you know. So there are certain issues whereby you go, no. So I'm trying to just stop and think, well, what do I think exactly? And I think we've had this chat before, Constantine. Actually, the more precise about what you think, the more that you piss people off, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I did a Radio 4 special recently, and there was a section in the middle of it about Black Lives Matter. And of course, you know, I critiqued some of the hypocrisies about how people responded to the mass gatherings, and also about certain political motives on the groups. But also, after a couple of weeks of Black Lives Matter, it did make me stop and reflect about the experience of, you know, black people in this country. And the message that I had in that bit was probably one that would be seen as quite liberal and left-wing. And of course, I had like twats coming for me on Facebook, you know, direct messages. I always get the cowards on direct messages, and then, oh, you sold out to the libs and stuff. Again, the idea that like the consequence of a culture war would just own every single opinion that I have is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the danger is when you step out of line, then, you know, you could, the way that the left have devoured their own, I do wonder if that's something that's going to start happening more and more on the right.
It is happening, and it's not even left or right, it's anything. Like nowadays, the moment we interview someone whose views don't align precisely with like John 73:21,
Yeah.
He's outraged, and John 73 is never watching trigonometry again. And it's like, well,
then John 73:21, I would argue, that doesn't have any conviction in his views, right? The truth is, and when I have people on the podcast that disagree with me, the reason I'm able to nod along and listen is because I have conviction in what I think. I'm not challenged. If there's something that makes me challenge what I think, I'm glad about that. All right, I'd never thought about it that way. But I'm not like fundamentally triggered. I mean, you remember that gif of that girl, you know, the triggered girl?
Yeah.
You always see that, and I always think about her. She could probably tour off that. The triggered girl. I wonder whether, because that gif is quite old now, isn't it? She's
from
probably...
Trump.
Yeah, it's
from
Trump.
the first Trump.
She's probably... She might even be a Republican now. You know? The triggered girl. But that was always like a trope of the left, and it does concern me that these guys, the last thing these kind of like hard right guys or people that are really enmeshed in the culture war would think is that they're anything like that girl. And yet when you get upset by who's wearing poppies and who's not wearing poppies, I'd argue you're exactly like that girl, you know? And I would love it if everybody wanted to respect the sacrifice that were made in world wars for this country. I'd love it if everyone just felt like that. But if they don't, maybe that's partly what we were fighting for, was their right to fucking not do that.
Yeah, completely. Now, we've been in lockdown. We've seen the culture war ramp up. What effect do you think that's going to have on comedy?
Well, it was interesting, wasn't it? Because I think last time I was on, we were like, "Hey, man, let's just all chill out. Let's do some balloon modelling." And actually, I think the capacity for people to just stay at home and kind of lose themselves in online opinions did exacerbate it. And I think that there was a period of, you know, certainly with the start of the statue toppling, and everything was more radical. Every protest became more militant. And, you know, there was last summer, in particular last summer, you know, there were shows getting removed from the BBC, and it did seem, I think that period, again, if you want to analyse all the things that have caused this vote swing towards Conservatives in England, that's all part of it.
Of course it is.
Because people go, that's what the left is, you know? They want to stop things. They used to be the fun guys. I remember in the 90s, the left was the free speech thing. And you know, another thing I found funny recently is you'll probably both have had this, is people online, they don't understand how they sound to a broad audience of people. So often they'll say, yeah, he's one of these free speech guys. You go, that sounds all right. Yeah, he's one of these free speech warriors. Well, sounds like a good warrior.
Yeah.
Why would being a free speech warrior? How the fuck have we got to the point where left-wing people think that identifying people as being a free speech warrior is a bad thing? But that is one of the processes and consequences of descending and burrowing as hard as you can into an echo chamber. And the first chat we had about echo chambers was after the 2015 election. And it does feel like of late, everyone was like, no, I need to get outside of my echo chamber. But of late, it feels like people going, no, I think I need to fucking like reinforce with concrete balustrades and a steel roof, because they've sort of experimented with it. They've realised that they can't persuade people. So they've kind of hunkered down.
And also, we haven't been able to see people face to face. Like, we might not agree on everything, but we can have a chat and the human element is there and we're sort of understanding we're both human beings. But online, none of that exists and none of that happens. You're just an avatar to me, and my job is to destroy you with facts and logic.
But that's what I find so often when people, I've had falling outs with people on Twitter, then we meet in person, they go, is everything cool between us? I was like, we fell out on Twitter. Do you know what I mean? To me, that's like playing your mate at PlayStation and lobbing the joypad and just fucking going for a walk around the block because you're angry. That's the level I see it as. But a lot of people have made that confusion between that and real life. And even on my lads' WhatsApp group, where there was a couple of political discussions over the last few days about Brexit. And I thought, you know what, let's just stop talking about it, because I know that if we had this chat over a pint, this would be fine. This would be absolutely nothing like the chat that we have now. But I wonder if people become addicted to the adrenaline that a good old tear-up gets. People feel alive, don't they? You know, when you know what you oppose, you know what you believe in. People feel, a lot of these, it's mainly middle-aged blokes, let's be honest. It is always middle-aged blokes. They watch Question Time, they drink some Merlot, and they're... And I think, I don't feel like that. I don't think, and maybe I communicate badly, I don't feel like a combative person, but the problem is when you tweet something, they'll think I tweet it like, this is a bit funny, isn't it? and they'll think I'm in a finger jabbing, fuck you lefties way, but that's not my style. And maybe that's why I'm really excited to get back out touring in September, is then...
Well, that was smooth,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Was it good?
So
He's
smooth.
a pro.
Keep it touring. Keep selling. But just because then if someone wants to pull what you're saying out of context, they'll have to literally invent a mood that wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in it, what the brilliant thing about stand-up is it's a very permissive environment, and you say things and people can see you being a bit cheeky, you know, they can see your body language. Then you go, all right, if you want to come out of that room and then pretend that I meant something else, then fine. But at least you knew in the moment what I was driving at.
That's what, talking about comedy, Francis was asking about. That's, I opened for you a few times, and that's what I was found about your approach to comedy. Even you were much less even than me. Like, you are really trying to see things from the other person's point of view. So I would be the controversial person opening for you, and then you'd come in and tone it down.
Well, that tour, in a way, was probably more conciliatory than the one that I'm taking out.
Oh, right.
I'm
You've
just
gone full
completely
culture warrior
contradicting.
now.
I just...
Fucking transgenders coming over here.
Well, I've just got more... I think I've got more... I know what I think more now. And I've wanted to talk about culture war stuff for a while, but I haven't had the jokes or I haven't had the way of saying it. But just recently, there have been a few things that have occurred to me that I go, yeah, that's what I think. It's like, I'm genuinely not angered by anybody having a different sexual identity or fitting in somewhere on this kind of like rainbow spectrum.
I mean, it'd be a bold mood if you were, Geoff, just coming out. You know the gays,
Yeah,
right?
I've got a right problem with that. But on the other, when you talk about like sexuality and gender and having so many different versions, it just suddenly occurred to me that masculinity and femininity were already a spectrum, right? We already knew, you already had members of your family that you knew that the simple notions of masculinity and femininity didn't exactly apply to them. You know what I mean? So your Uncle John that collected the porcelain dolls or whatever, you knew John, that it was different for him. And you know that fucking Kim Kardashian and Sue Perkins aren't the same, right? So that already existed. People are smart enough to already know. So if people want to have 100 words, that's fine. It doesn't anger me. But I also think that it's perhaps there's a bit of presentism about thinking that previous generations weren't aware of those differences anyway. And that's my point is, I suppose the point of the new tour in a way is going to be, I'm not angry about this, but I do think some of it's a bit fucking weird.
But why? Yeah, and it is true. It's a bit fucking weird. Like, so it is.
I'm glad the way he doubled down on it as well.
No,
like Geoff was like, it's a bit fucking weird. France was like, it's a bit fucking weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now, there's the kind of quote. So if somebody was against you in that moment, this is how the internet will work. They would think that what I was saying is it's a bit fucking weird about other sexualities. If they already think you're a bad person, that is what they would take for that. When I was talking about the kind of totality of culture war stuff and the changing of liberal languages and definitions, that's a really good example of how that could work. Why are people who are not exactly like you fucking weird, Geoff Norcott?
Yeah. And vice versa, there'll be John whoever going, I can't believe there's only two genders. Well, maybe there is, but Geoff is just talking. He's just having a chat. Like he's got some jokes about it. Why don't you go and listen to them?
I'm not. I mean, the truth is, I'm not angry about anything, and my counsellor would tell you that's one of the biggest problems. One is I'm freakishly not angry. Actually, it would probably be helpful for me if I could get on and have it out with John 72:31.
Yeah. But where do you think the landscape is going to change when it comes to comedy on TV? Because The MASH has been cancelled. There's a real thirst for centrist political comedy, comedy that attacks both the left and the right. Do you think that there's going to be a company, a TV company who's bold enough to make that? Or do you think we're going to be playing the same furrow as before?
Well, I mean, as I always say, I think comedy's already changed. It's a question of whether TV catches up. So we know that. You boys have been successful in doing this and other things. Andrew Doyle's had a best-selling book. Simon Evans tours. Leo's done great things. Dominic Frisby's had a hit song. You know, and if I'm leaving anybody out, there's a lot of evidence that it's already changed. So the only question is, does TV catch up? Interestingly, this last set of election results, I think the Liberal left have been guilty of thinking, well, normal order will be resumed soon. Brexit was just a thing. Okay, the 2019 general, but they'll all come back to Labour eventually. Normal order will be resumed. I think that these local elections have underlined perhaps that there is a more ongoing change. And I don't know if TV companies can forever ignore this huge percentage of people. And it's not about, I don't want to be in a right-wing comedy show. I don't think anyone in Britain is going, you know what we need? Well, there are a few people, they're mainly online, but he's going, we need it all the other way. That would be a massive mistake, to go from a left-wing bias to a right-wing bias. But what they do want, I think, or find it odd that there doesn't exist, is diversity of opinion. So say, for example, you're on a topical panel show and the issue of Meghan Markle comes up, and say she said something wildly pretentious that is obviously fucking ridiculous to a lot of people. But you may have people on that panel that feel, because of the culture war, they're uneasy about criticising Meghan Markle, a woman of colour who already gets a lot of unfair scrutiny from the press. So what you end up with is a panel of people that don't say anything bad about Meghan Markle. You go, well, that's not really where Britain's at. You know, my own view with Meghan and Harry is again, it's not about anger. It's just that I liked them at the beginning, and bit by bit they started to piss me off. And they sort of reminded me of, you know, like a couple you meet on holiday and you befriend them for like a day. You go, oh, Meghan and Harry, like, are such a great couple. And then 3 days later, you're like, Jesus, I cannot take these two. You know, that's as simple as it was to me, right? Yeah. It's not a controversial thing to say, but even that opinion you wouldn't really hear within a topical panel show. So I have discussions with people. There are plenty of people in TV that get this, and again, this will be something that a lot of defund the BBC type people won't want to hear, but there's a lot of people very high up in the BBC that get this, but it's a huge machine. So there's the BBC on one hand, you know, there's various seniorities of commissioners, then there's production companies, you know, and in fairness to production companies, when they get into TV, there's a kind of TV show that they want to make. And, you know, the platforming, as they might see it, right-wing views maybe wasn't why they got into television. But the truth is, if terrestrial television doesn't accommodate these views, you know, topical comedy on terrestrial television is going to continue to diminish. And the worst thing is it's a very, like, if you're pro-BBC, right, it's one of the easiest sticks to beat the BBC with, isn't it? Most topical output would reflect a certain bias. However, one show, and then people just think I'm arse-kissing it, but I think one show has proved how well it can work, is the news quiz. Andy Zaltzman, now the resident host, absolutely brilliant. But it seems in their lineups, most weeks, they're having somebody from the other side of the fence. And I think it helps everybody because it has certain views represented, and it also, crucially, for the left-wing comics, it stops them from feeling like part of the establishment. Do you know what I mean? So somebody brilliant like Alan Cochrane goes on and he makes a joke that might make a lot of sense outside of metropolitan areas. But then the left-wing comic can then come back on that. And it's just more natural. It's so blindingly obvious that this is what needs to happen. But as you guys know, the last time this argument happened, there were people, insiders at the BBC, that somehow claimed that, it just doesn't make as much sense in London, and that's where we record most of our stuff.
But they also said right-wingers aren't funny. There was someone
there's no one out there. Well, let me tell you, I've been given people a list of people that I know, and I've said, if you ever want to have a chat with me, after that came out, I said, look, these are all the funny people that you could call upon, if you so wished. And the idea that somebody like me couldn't have a good gig in London, and people wouldn't believe this, but it's the easiest place for me to sell tickets by a factor of 1 billion. Well, people wouldn't believe that because that's untrue. It's not by 1 billion. But even when you sort of factor in population differences, that is, you know, that's the place where we do best. And even if you just break down the demographics of London, I mean, look at the current London mayoral vote. Even the amount of Londoners that voted Leave was still several million people.
Yeah.
So I think there is a resistance in certain quarters, but I think in the long run, they're not really doing the BBC any favours, actually, because topical comedy is one of the easiest sticks to beat the BBC with. And you don't need, like, a whole panel of people like me. You just need, say there's 5 people on the show, or 7, one person per show who has that view.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too much to
And the
ask.
thing is, if they don't do it, the internet will kill them.
And
It's just as simple as that.
The internet's already doing it. You know,
Yeah.
like my podcast and you guys with this, the reason that these things have done all right is because it's low-hanging fruit. And it's amazing.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
I do.
The reason this is done all right is you're a bit shit, but no one else is doing
No,
it.
but you do it well, and there's an audience.
I know exactly. I'm
There's
just
an audience
joking.
for it, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think certain figures have said, "Oh, the reason right-wing comedy," and I don't think this is about right-wing comedy, by the way. I think it's comedy that reflects another point of view,
Yeah.
perhaps a small C conservative view in
Exactly.
society, hasn't done well because there's not a market for it. And you go, well, there is, and also you can't say that when the audience for legacy topical shows on
Plummeting.
television is just a steady managed decline, right? There's just literally no evidence to stop change in comedy on television.
So let me ask you just one
Yeah, sure.
quick thing on that. How did you feel about MASH being cancelled?
Well, MASH, yeah, I mean, look, I enjoyed it while I did it. And I think that, in fairness to the show, it gets a lot of stick from the left. It was and remains the only show to give somebody anywhere right of centre a regular platform. That's true. You know, no one has even come close to that. You know, a lot of people think I've been on certain shows and I haven't. I'm happy for them to think that I have. MASH gave a regular, you know, and obviously the tone and stuff of that show, I had to fit in with the show to a point, but I was still able to say things. I was still able to make jokes about J.K. Rowling, Gary Lineker, you know, jokes about second referendum, jokes about Jeremy Corbyn. I think what it was when it went left-wing, it went very left-wing, but it also had jokes from the desk that were about Corbyn and stuff. So it did have quite a lot of balance in it. And I look back on the bits that I did with Nish, and I think that I didn't realise that at the time, but that was something quite unique. You know, there were 2 people of very different opinions trying to sort of get along. It was, you know, it was a challenging thing to do in terms of getting a piece that kind of worked together. The audience were good to me, by the way. You know, they were very left-leaning and Remainy, but they were fair with me. And one of my best memories of that show was, it was at the time just before, I think it was late 2019, right? Labour didn't really have a Brexit position. And they'd come up with this position, which was that they were going to get a new deal, take it to Brussels, and then have a referendum on it where they campaigned against it. And I was trying so hard to write a joke on it. And then I just said that in the room, and then the audience pissed themselves laughing. And I thought, that's a left-wing Remainy audience, mainly. And it just underlined that there was a spirit of fair play in the room. So yeah, it's of course a show that you're in regularly. It's a shame, but then I think if that show's not going to exist, there needs to either be in existing shows, there needs to be more of people like us, or there needs to be something new that picks up that slack.
Do you think it was a political decision?
I might give you now a political answer. I think that when a show doesn't get renewed, it wasn't actually cancelled, actually. There's a slight difference. That it is more than just one thing, you know. It is more than just one thing.
And Geoff, don't you think, like, you see the fact that these producers look at declining engagement, declining viewership, don't really do anything to change it, is mirrored by left-wing politicians seeing declining votes and, again, seemingly doing nothing to change it?
I do think that. Do you know what? I've learned this thing when you're doing interviews. You put it so well. Yeah. I went to go, all I'd have done was say what you said with different words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, basically.
Yeah, and again, that is a problem. But I don't think they're going to change, if I'm being honest, because to me, they see it as a moral issue. They see conservatives, right of centre, as being immoral.
But who's they, though, when you say they?
I think the people who are on the left, the people who are staunch Labourite, we see them, and again, look, it's all anecdotal. You look at the social media, whatever else, they see the people on the right as being immoral. So
there are a constituency of people that see it that way, and you'll love this. But even with the book that I've got coming out, but the editor of that book, the guy that commissioned me to make that book, the guy that's invested in that book, is very left wing. You know, there are people that do see that this is not helpful to the left, and maybe, I guess what I'm saying, Francis, maybe that's where it'll come from. They realise, you know, I've got this cycle. I'm such a simple person, right? But Norcott's cycle is that right-wing elections, left double down on culture. That's it, right? It keeps going like that. So they think, fuck you. Okay, you won that last election. I'll tell you what, our TV show is going to be even more left-wing. And then working class people go, well, I'm a bit worried about all this. I think this doesn't seem to represent my experience. I think I'll vote Tory again. You go, oh, vote Tory again, did ya? Well, check out our new TV show. And this cycle. And then check out our adverts, right? And check out our stances. And it's this ridiculous kind of merry-go-round when what it really needs is people on the left to actually go, this, it's just good old-fashioned conservative pragmatism. This isn't helping us. We've now had 11 years of this. We haven't really won any major elections apart from Khan in the last mayor election, probably again this time by a smaller margin. Maybe we should do it differently. And I think the fear maybe was that if we allow it a voice, it will get bigger. Well, it's got bigger without having a voice. There's a little sound bite. Did you see the way I did like that then? Well, it's got bigger without... fucking flipped it round, didn't I?
And what do you think is going to be the future of the Beeb, Geoff? Do you reckon it's going to survive?
Yeah, I do. I want it to survive. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. Right now, thumbs down on the video.
But we're both on record saying we think the BBC should survive, provided it can evolve with the times.
Yeah. And I think, but there's lots of reasons I've heard recently that I think. I mean, one is like a BBC Music on air, like. Commercial radio stations, their playlists are a fraction of what the BBC is, right? So one thing I love, one thing I'm really patriotic about in this country is our music culture. It's incredible. Yeah. We absolutely smashed per capita, the amount of great songs we've produced in this country should be a source of pride for fucking everybody. And part of the reason for that is that you can get a lot more different music on when you've got a state broadcaster than when you've just got a commercial broadcaster. And I think, you know, the investment in comedy, and sometimes, you know, with the funeral of Prince Philip and the early days of COVID, there is a capacity to bring people together. And I think that there are, like I say, there are people at the BBC in very senior positions that do get this, and it's now becoming a fundamental point, is that diversity has to include diversity of viewpoint. It can't... The idea that the output in media, TV shows and stuff and news should reflect broadly what Britain is a good idea. You know what I mean? It's a fucking logical idea, right? Everyone should have a place at that table. But it loses credibility if it doesn't include viewpoint, right? That's where a lot of people tap out. But they go, well, that's not fair. You're prioritising all other kinds of diversity apart from people you disagree with. So people do get it. The point is the culture. I mean, it's such a huge employer of how much time the people that are currently at the top have. And I mean, it's like oil tanker, turning it round. It's the same message again and again. We're not changing this. This is the new course, and you're going to have to get on board. And again, it's like this will benefit the left. If people love the BBC, then actually a bit more diversity of viewpoint, and also, you know, programming from people from working class backgrounds. That's going to help you, because it's going to help the BBC to exist longer.
Geoff, listen, man, it's always great to chat. It's good to see you again. Last time we recorded an interview, it was literally the day before the pandemic, like, properly kicked off.
Oh, there's a new one coming. It seems to have hit the Labour Party first this time. But there's not really a new pandemic coming. You both looked at me like,
what's he talking about?
Like, what the fuck has he heard?
Didn't check the news this morning. Apparently, there's a new pandemic, guys.
No, everything's gonna be fine. I'm good. You know, what's all part of my politics? Just optimism. I have a general feeling that things are gonna be all right. We're gonna do okay. This is a great country, you know, and that's what allows someone like a fucking occasional charlatan like Boris Johnson to do all right, because that's all he does.
Yeah.
Level up. Great. Jobs, jabs, you know?
I don't often say this, but to the Russian mind, Boris Johnson being the leader of this country is inexplicable. It is inexplicable.
It is weird.
How have you got this guy?
People love him. That fucking inflatable Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Inaudible. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I've ever, you know, the most conservative I ever was, I still didn't have a thing in the window.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That person's gone, you know what I'm going to do?
You know what, Geoff? In the interest of balance, and this is what balance looks like, we spend 50 minutes bashing the left.
It's always good fun.
We're going to do 2 minutes at the end about the Tories. Our mutual friend, who you've already referred to, Dominic Frisby, tweeted about this election that's just happened, saying, The problem with this is it's going to make the Tories think they're doing a good job.
Yes. I mean, that was a brilliant point, because they haven't on a lot of issues, and one of the biggest issues with the Conservatives is communications have been dreadful, often dreadful, flip-flopping, coming out with really strong stances. Gavin Williamson, right? I'm gonna take schools to court. Oh no, actually we're having a lockdown anyway. Fucking just stand back a bit, mate. Just fall back until you've actually got a policy. They're also quite patrician and nanny state-ish. And the other thing is, Boris, because in a way his own vanity needs him to have younger, more impressionable politicians around him, they did away with a lot of really experienced politicians. Like
Javid's case in point.
Javid, Penny Mordaunt, Amber Rudd, really good, skilled people. People like Nicky Morgan have gone. So there's a generation of politicians below them that just have been learning on the job at a really difficult time. I think one thing is they have done the hours now. It'd probably be good to keep them around because they've done hours and hours of media time. But like someone like, for a Conservative, somebody like Matt Hancock, who suddenly fucking decided he was the nation's stepdad, has been very difficult to stomach. You know, I think when the new variant came along, everything changed to a point. But before that, Matt Hancock sort of go, well, I'm going to try and let you have Christmas. And you go, who fucking gave this guy could somebody, I mean, I'm not advocating bullying, but please just flush his head down the toilet briefly. Because there were points last year.
I would love to be there.
But you know, with Matt Hancock, he'd be the guy that after the third time that happened, he'd learn to love the taste of toilet water. That's how he would power himself like a sort of supervillain. And I know that...
We've got Tory MPs that watch this show, mate.
Mate, look, I'm not owned by anyone. You know, like, and there've been plenty of times, one thing that has been odd to me is like people have presumed, like, oh, you just got on to kiss the Tories' arses. No, I like critiquing politics generally. Yeah. I have a bias, definitely. You know, I have a bias. But over the course of the last year, if anyone has listened to my podcast or seen me on shows, I've had plenty to say about the Tories. And I do think that some of the cronyism is something that, you know, I think they're quite happy now that it seems to have died down and then the interest has died off. But once you get out of the context of a pandemic, saying it felt right at the time is one of those arguments in history. There's a lot of stuff that felt right at the time, Matt. But what I don't want to see is you and everyone you know riding around on fucking jet skis because you got rich off a pandemic. I understand they made certain decisions which needed to be made quickly, but that context will fade away over time. And maybe that's one glimmer of hope for the left is we might have a stream of, look at this guy who bought a place in the British Virgin Islands. You know, you might see people that got very wealthy off a pandemic, and that might be one of few routes back for the Labour Party.
Well, Geoff, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find you online, where is the best place to do that?
Twitter, Geoff Norcott, and as I say, you'll find I'll be flogging the shit out of the book, which comes out May 13th, and then the tour, I Blame the Parents, is in September.
Check both of those out. And we're going to ask Geoff a couple of questions for our local. Before we do that, Geoff, our last question for the main interview itself is always the same. What is the one thing we're still not talking about that we really should be?
Annoyingly, when you said that, I've mentioned them already in the interview, but I do think this desertion of the kind of people that would naturally vote Labour to city centres, I think that will be where some of the Labour debate goes next. There's not many people talking about that right now. And then the other thing is something that I've just said just now, which is about Tory cronyism. I do think that, you know, the major government in 92, you know, got elected with a reasonable little majority, but over time, sleaze nipped at their heels. I think it is a mistake to think, it's very easy. I mean, I've just said the Labour Party is going to split, but after the 97 election result, Tories finished forever. They'll never come back for this. Policy, we're all so stuck in the present now. I would be I'd be cautious about thinking that this is now 10 years of Boris Johnson. I mean,
hope not.
Just look at Boris Johnson and think, could he go 10 years without doing something that sees him launched from office? So I think that maybe the thing that we'll be talking about soon is perhaps there's a lot of hype at the moment about the Tories are embedded for a decade. I personally think that one way or another, whether it's through different coalitions of parties, I don't think it's quite as nailed on as that.
I think he's going to carry on doing just fine with even younger and younger girlfriends and younger kids, mate.
And the public will just celebrate.
Yeah, exactly. He's had his 15th kid. Well done, Boris.
Yeah. Well, you know, there is that weird thing in a lot of other democracies when there are scandals that are supposed to hurt the politician.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember, who was the one? Jean Hollande, the president of France. Like when he had that affair, apparently one of the main things that lost him points in the polls was the tacky way that he arrived for it. He arrived on the back of a moped to his mistress's place. A lot of French people going, that's outrageous. You're going, yeah, cheating on his wife. They go, no, he's on a moped, man. Turn up in a fucking limo, mate.
Yeah, do it with a bit of class.
It's France. They have class, mate, when it comes to these things. Anyway, Geoff, thanks for coming back. Where I Went Right is the book, and the Tories Don't Blame the Parents. I blame the parents.
Yeah.
Not don't blame, sorry.
It's where did I go right? And
we're going to cut that bit out, mate.
no, leave it in. Where did Constantine go wrong in saying where did I go right? I don't blame the parents. No,
Mate, it's early in the morning.
Maybe if you're a lefty, it's called, maybe I need 2 titles.
Yeah.
It's called I Don't Blame the Parents. Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Make sure you follow Geoff. He's one of our favourite guests ever, one of our favourite comedians. Geoff, thanks for coming back. We're going to do a couple of quick questions for locals. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. We will see you very soon with another brilliant interview like this one or a Raw show. All of them go out at 7 p.m. UK time.
Take care and see you soon, guys. We hope you've enjoyed this incredible interview. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell button so that you never miss another fantastic episode.
And if you believe that the work we do here at TRIGGERnometry is important, support us by joining our locals community using the link below.